feature. This week, we are featuring DA Councillor Angus Mckenzie, who was elected a ward councillor for Bonteheuwel in 2014. Councillor Mckenzie pioneered a groundbreaking program of law enforcement advancement plan which sought to place more boots on the ground in order to combat crime and gangsterism in his area. This was to augment and supplement the work that was done by SAPS, which was wholly inadequate against this scourge. The tremendous success of this LEAD program has fundamentally changed this community and is now set to be replicated across the province. And so now we hear more from him. Hello, Angus, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Sibiwe. Good morning, John, and to all the viewers out there. Thank you.
Perfect. So you were elected as a ward councillor. Tell us a little bit more about what you found in Bonteheuwel when you first got elected.
So I was actually elected in 2016. So
okay.
I was elected in 2016. We won with an overwhelming majority in the area. There's very, very strong support base for the Democratic Alliance in the area. But I think most critically what we found was that there was a community that was alive with possibilities. It's smack bang in the center of the city, so it's easy, accessible routes into the city. Outside, we had public transport interchanges, but the social inequalities within the area was probably some of our biggest challenges, which led to poverty and then the ongoing gang violence situation. And so on a daily basis, we would be receiving complaints from mothers and families saying that their children can't go to school because of gang violence. They're not able to go to work because of gang violence. And on a daily basis, our phones would not stop ringing of yet another person has been shot. And so even though we had the situation, it became extremely important as a leader in that community. How do you show that you care? But in showing that you care, how do you fix the problem? Because what effectively led to the solution to the problem has changed the community completely. So we've seen a consistent increase in our matric pass results rate in the community over the last few years, and it's gone from 58% to 68% to 75%, which we currently are now. One really, really successful number that's come out of this change in the community is that 12,000 children started grade 1 in that community 12 years ago. We had a retention rate, unfortunately, 4 years ago of 0.0012% of kids ended up in matric 12 years later. That number's changed considerably now. So we're seeing more children staying at school, finishing their education, giving themselves a better option and chance in life. So while the LEAD program has generally assisted from a crime prevention and suppressing of gang violence in the situation, the ripple effects of that LEAD program, the fact that a party has shown that we care, has been able to transform that community in many, many other avenues as well.
That's incredible. I mean, just to show that, like, you know, if you're fighting a scourge of gangsterism and crime, it doesn't just affect the crime levels, but it just affects the entire community. And so, I mean, why were the residents feeling like they could not rely on the SAPS at the time?
I think there are various challenges with the South African Police Service, and I think we need to highlight the fact that the South African Police Services, which is controlled nationally by the ANC government in effect, has really let down the local police officer on the ground. I think we need to make that clear. There are some really hard-working local police officers, but with the lack of resources, with the lack of numbers, with the fact that they just are unable to get to crime scenes because the vehicles aren't working, or they don't even have bulletproof vests to be able to protect themselves, let alone the community, it's really placed these officers at a very difficult position. And so what effectively happened in Bonteheuwel is you have a community of 85,000 people, of which you have 2 SAPS vans per shift patrolling 85,000 people.
Sure.
So those numbers are completely skewed. And so while the United Nations tells us we need 1 policeman to every 280 odd people, in Bonteheuwel you had a situation where you had 1 policeman to every 25 to 30,000 people, which is completely ludicrous and completely unheard of. And so when police don't respond to people, that breaks down that level of trust. When they do respond and they arrest someone, and within 12 hours, the community who gave the tip-off of that individual sees that same individual walking the streets again, it completely destroys the morale of that community. So what became critical was, how do you rebuild trust in this community with this law enforcement team, with this LEAP advancement program? And I've always maintained since the start of it that more police don't overcome crime.
Yeah.
Building relationships with communities overcomes crime. Because crime is not just about a gangster's willingness to shoot someone else. There is a reason why that gangster is attempting to shoot someone else, because there's a fundamental breakdown that needs to be resolved. And so for me, it's always been, and we've seen the success of it, we need to be able to build relationships. We need to build bridges, and we need to create a situation where communities are once again trusting law enforcement and the response of law enforcement to the situations that we face.
So, but then you introduced this program, this initiative in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so how did you set it up, and sort of what were the key tenets of it?
So obviously our SAP's response was little to nothing.
Yes.
We then were allocated 100 law enforcement officers in the area, and Bonteheuwel strategically is quite an easy area to navigate. And so we very simply drew a diagram. We blocked Bonteheuwel into 4 quadrants, and we said that we're placing 25 officers into each quadrant. And we don't want to see officers in cars. We want to see officers walking the street. We want to see officers talking to community members. We want to see officers interacting with children. We want to see them build this relationship. That was good, and that started the healing process for relationships. What we then did was we still needed information. We still needed communities to give us information. So we've seen the sad situations of all these shootings, and it really, without information, we can't really fight crime. And so we needed to find a way that communities would give us information, and because of their previous experience with SAPs, they wouldn't give us information. And so I became that person that the Bonteheuwel people gave information to. I was their trusted ward councillor. I was the man that they voted for and they trusted. And my personal phone number became their tip-off service. And we'd receive hundreds of tip-offs every day that this is about to happen, this gangster's doing this, this is what's happening here. And what we were able to do is take that information immediately, because unfortunately I hardly sleep, but we were able to take that information immediately, pass it on to a secured WhatsApp group, which had these law enforcement officials on it. And within 3 minutes of the resident giving us a tip-off, you would find a van at that area, at that point. And so that built confidence within people, because the person that's giving the tip-off knows that 3 minutes ago she sent this to the councillor, and 3 minutes later, there is a van outside the house. And so she tells the neighbour. And the neighbour tells the next neighbour, and the response becomes quicker, and the visibility becomes higher. And over this period, you just start seeing more people regaining the trust in these officers. And I think one key thing on this topic, and I've constantly patrolled with them. I've even got into trouble patrolling with these officers, but I just enjoy it so much. We would come across young children, whether they've had a small knife on them or a little bit of drugs. And so the question goes, so ideally this child should be arrested and he should be put through the system. But does that benefit that child? Is it not more important for us to understand where this child comes from? What home does this child come from? What's happening in this child's home environment? Why is the child not in school? So we were able to take this LEAP program, match it up with social development to show that it's not just about hard knocking down of gangsterism and crime, but how do we help so that that child actually becomes a meaningful person within the community as well, instead of sending him through the system. And so we brought social development on board, and we have an active social development team that are now constantly working in partnership with myself and these officers in trying to turn around that community.
And this is incredible stuff. So we sent a crew to Bonteheuwel this week to go and chat to some residents about this program and how they've experienced it and how it's changed their lives. Let's take a look.
Before the LEAP program started and before the law enforcement officers were deployed to Bonteheuwel, we had exceptionally high crime, as with the rest of the Cape Flats, because Bonteheuwel is situated on the Cape Flats.
We were infected and inflicted with gang violence.
You can't walk in the street, because if they shoot, you're going to get caught in the fire, because, it's bullets flying everywhere.
When gunshots ring out, the first thing that comes to my mind is get onto the floor. You never know when these bullets actually come through your home.
Our kids couldn't even play in peace in the park. I was actually very scared even to leave my home. Constantly living in fear.
My kid was robbed by gunpoint of an Apple iPhone. My husband was gun-pointed thrice with his work bag and things taken from him.
At night, gangsters used to run over our rooftops.
I heard all these gunshots, I think something like 10 of them. And I couldn't leave for work that morning because there was a dead body lying in front of our gate. And as I looked up from the one, I noticed another one just across the road.
As we get on our corner, we have to look left, right, and center because of the gang violence.
I was almost shot at. I had to reverse in Bonteheuwel Avenue from Dr. de Villiers all the way down to Bonteheuwel Avenue because they were shooting in S&T block.
It upset everyone. Children were traumatized. People were traumatized. I was traumatized. And it just affects our normal way of life.
That is how bad it was here. But since the law enforcement moved in and since LEAP is here in Bonteheuwel, we have seen, please don't get this wrong, Bonteheuwel still has issues. But the positivity and the difference in the people, you can immediately see.
You go out, you see the people jogging, old people walking in the street. So comfortable they feel with the policing around them.
Constantly, they patrolling our streets. So that makes you feel more at ease.
Before we had this program, there were days when I dreaded even getting up. But afterwards, I felt safe because, I could be walking down the street or crossing the road or down Bonteheuwel Avenue, and I would see 5 law enforcement vehicles in that time just passing me by, which made me feel safer.
Thanks to our ward councillor, who's very, very active in the community. We can phone him late at night, in the middle of the night, and he's always there and he's always available to help.
Look where we're standing today. We're standing here. We walked all the way from the center. We weren't robbed. We weren't accosted. Nothing happened to us. Here's young people out. Here's old people out. Joggers passed us. All of that. None of this would have been possible if it hadn't to be for LEAP and the law enforcement officers.
I would say our councillor fight for all that things, to make Bonteheuwel safer for the community.
John, I want to come to you. I mean, that is an incredible endorsement, not just of, the local leader, but also just of the ingenuity of people who live. You've always literally spoken about what the value is of local leadership, of going to communities and responding to their localized needs. And I mean, what do you have to say when you look at that and you see the difference that this kind of work is making in people's lives?
Well, first of all, very proud. I mean, to be able to lead a party with councillors with the quality of people like Angus, and I'm happy to say he's my mom's favourite councillor in the whole of the DA, so he comes with a big badge of honour. I think she's one of his biggest followers. To have a quality public representative who's there not for the salary, not for the position, but because he wants to serve, or he or she wants to serve the community. And you can see that servant leadership makes a big difference. Secondly, to have a city council that is responsive. And I think Angus touched on a very important point that a lot of people forget. The SAPS is not run by the provincial government. Yeah. We want it to be run by the provincial government. We want policing powers to be devolved to a local and provincial level because it will then give greater powers to be able to really tackle crime. But it is run nationally, and that is a challenge. Now, you can do one of two things. You can throw your arms up and say, well, it's national government's responsibility, or you can do what we've done in the city of Cape Town and get stuck in as a city to try and fill that gap. And projects like this are only possible because you've got excellent public representatives who understand the need of their community. You've got a community that's willing to work with the councillor and the local municipality, and you've got a responsive government that is willing to get stuck in and deal with it. And that can only happen when you've got a DA government.
Absolutely. And I mean, now to this point, John, I mean, the province is now looking to replicate this model. So again, looking at what works and what's excellent and then spreading it across.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is exactly the type of innovation that we want to bring not only to Bonteheuwel, to Cape Town, to the Western Cape. We want to bring it to South Africa, to show people that you don't have to live in fear of gangsters and criminals, that we can turn the tide against crime, but it requires the commitment and resources to do so. And that can only come when you've got a government that's prioritizing the people's needs rather than prioritizing who's getting what tender and how they can make themselves or their families rich.
Angus, I mean, again, this is a massive endorsement, not just for the program, but for the people who you lead in your community, and just to seeing the difference that it makes. And I mean, how do you feel that now even the province is looking to replicate this?
Look, I think at the end of the day, it's about that people. It's about changing people's lives and giving people better opportunities in life. Over the last few weeks, I've looked at house prices in my community. And the interesting thing was that 5-6 years ago, a 2-bedroom house would sell for something like 380,000 rand. 3-bedroom homes are going for nothing short of 800,000 rand in my area today. What does that tell me? It tells me that property owners are investing in the community. People want to live in a community that's safer. People want to live in a community where there are opportunities for people. And more so importantly is creating spaces and places that people can thrive. My only wish is that we are able to not only replicate this in Bonteheuwel, but across the country. Yeah. And for people to not just view it as a Bonteheuwel project, but for people to view it as a project of a administration and a party, a DA party, that actually cares about people. We're not going to get everything right all the time, but the things that matter to communities, understanding those local issues on the ground and fixing local issues has a ripple effect that changes people's lives completely. And I think that's the most important thing, and really just about servant leadership and seeing people understanding your passion, people understanding your love, and being led by that love and passion to be able to replicate the change within their homes, into their children's lives, to see better people being born and nurtured through these communities.
Yeah. And I mean, just this weekend, we've learnt of a number of teenagers who were shot in the Mitchells Plain area, some of whom were injured. And ultimately, this is a grave injustice, and no family should live in this kind of fear. And so we really thank you, Angus, for the work that you are doing in your community. And then we are quite excited that we're going to be blowing this up across the province. And again, it speaks to your point, John, about the fact that people must lend us their vote so we can do what we can to be able to bring the day difference where they live.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we will be back after this.